Something shocking just happened inside of Northern Ireland. To the surprise of everybody, the Catholics and the UK Protestants have decided to leave their bloody past behind and unite against the disastrous immigration policies of the UK government. If not even this won't give them the wake-up call that this is a serious issue that needs to be addressed, then nothing will. People like Keir Starmer have been especially iffy when it comes to things like, at the very least, acknowledging the serious issues with the illegals in this country that are still coming on boats at an alarming rate. In 2022, over 45,000 boats arrived on the shores of the UK. But if not even two groups with a dark history and mutual hatred uniting together won't wake them up to reality, then something is seriously wrong with this country. Just take a look at this clip right here where the Catholics and the Protestants are marching off, and at the end they meet up with Antifa, to which the police have to intervene.
Yeah, pedos off our streets! Pedos out! Pedos out! 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 Out!
Instance 3.471 of Antifa, trying to violently intervene from stopping a peaceful protest. Well, maybe not necessarily a peaceful protest. Things did end up getting a little bit heated in the end because, passions run high. But this alliance between these two rival groups was especially outstanding and impressive to watch, and it just goes to show how far immigration has went into this country and continent. These two groups have engaged in some serious conflicts in the past, including the sectarian violence of the Troubles that began in 1969 and lasted for 30 years, featuring widespread bombings, arson, and shootings. But it seems like something serious has managed to help them forget about it all, at least temporarily, only so they can unite against a common enemy, that being the immigration policies that are dragging this country to its knees. These people are not unfamiliar to what it's like to have ethnic wars. They've seen it happen to their parents, and they are not looking forward to having it happen again due to a blissful optimism. An optimism that hopes that all the war-ridden immigrants are going to instantly become peaceful and non-demanding the moment they arrive in this country. And I guess delusional people like Keir Starmer and Antifa are just going to continue to cover their eyes up and to label anybody that has a say about this as far right. And that's alt-right. Pun intended. If you want to keep ignoring what people are saying, go ahead and see how that turns out. If you think stopping the violence means ignoring the reasons people took to the streets and continuing to bash those asking for change, then fine. Keep doing that and see where that leads to. Just listen to this guy and to the stupid ideas that are going on through his head.
I'm in Northern Ireland here today for three purposes. Firstly, to meet the PSNI officers who've been on the front line during this disorder. Many of them have been injured. And my purpose was to say to them, thank you for what they have done. We make big asks of them, they step up, and they deserve our thanks. I've also had the chance to speak to the PSNI senior leadership about the challenges that they face and the support that they need. And then third, and very importantly, to speak to some of the communities most impacted about the fear that they have, the anxiety that they have about the recent disorder.
He sounds exactly like a Gaza official praising their terrorists for attacking Jews. I am just so glad for our brave fighters that are resisting against those racists. Jail them all already. Maybe I would have had some bits of sympathy for the police force if they weren't blatantly enacting on the two-tier policing they were instructed on. So ridiculous. We've become second-class citizens in our own country, and then you expect us to not be mad about it? Yeah, right.
The disorder is intolerable. It is incapable of justification. It's clearly racist, and it does not represent the modern, forward-looking Northern Ireland that I know that this place is. So I'm very pleased to achieve all those three things today and to work with all communities, to work with the PSNI and others to ensure that we handle this situation, not just the immediate disorder, but also the longer-term work that's necessary to ensure that we have that one Northern Ireland approach that I know represents the Northern Ireland, a modern Northern Ireland of the future.
And if there's anybody in the room that doesn't already know about the type of man that Keir Starmer is, Then I want you to watch the following clip very carefully and to tell me if you notice anything interesting in particular about him.
A woman can have a penis.
Nick, I'm not. I don't think we can conduct this debate with,
Trans rights are human rights, and I support the right to self-identification. I think we need to respect the right to self-identify, and we're committed to updating the GRA to introduce self-declaration for trans people.
We don't think that self-identification is the right way forward.
Is it transphobic to say only women have a cervix?
Well, it is something that shouldn't be said. It is not right.
Is it right or is it wrong for Rosie Duffield to say only women have a cervix?
Well, look, biologically, she of course is right.
She's right.
Quite the change of mind, isn't it? Could it be because he is just such an open-minded guy that loves to admit when he's wrong? Or could it possibly be that his advisors realized that it would garner him more support if he just ended up becoming normal and saying normal stuff instead of trying to appeal to the crazies of this world? And this is the type of person that Starmer is, together with everybody in his administration that always posts the most anti-patriotic stuff on their Twitter. Zero authenticity, zero transparency, zero humanity. They just go off of what their campaign advisors tell them, which is why they refuse to even at the very least acknowledge the problems this country faces. And this is just what we have to deal with in a democracy. Only people that are masters at manipulating the public's emotions and spinning the truth are going to come to power, which is why we have so many people like Keir Starmer, who refuse to just listen to what the public is saying if it doesn't benefit his bottom line. To the point where even groups that usually hate each other are coming together to resist his disastrous policies, which have been dragging on since forever. But if you're wondering what he's up to these days, just watch this clip. It'll fill you in.
The Prime Minister has said that the government is going to take further action to deal with smoking. It comes as there are reports that ministers are planning new measures which would put a stop to smoking outside of sports venues, nightclubs and in small parks. Let's hear what the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has been saying.
My starting point on this is to remind everyone that over 80,000 people lose their lives every year because of smoking.
But wait until he finds out how many deaths are caused by illegal immigration, because the aliens are taking up all the places in hospitals.
That's a preventable death. It's a huge burden on the NHS, and of course it's a burden on the taxpayer. So yes, we are going to take decisions in this space. More details will be revealed, but this is a preventable series of deaths, and we've got to take the action to reduce the burden on the NHS and reduce the burden on the taxpayer.
You said when you became Prime Minister you wanted politics to tread more lightly on people's lives. This is the opposite, isn't it?
Look, I think it's important to get the balance right, but everybody watching this who uses the NHS will know that it's on its knees. We have to relieve the burden, and that's why I spoke before the election about moving to a preventative model when it comes to health. I want the NHS back on its feet, but I also want it fit for the next, 75 years, just as we've had a brilliant 75 years already. And that means taking action in relation to preventable deaths, and these are 80,000 a year preventable deaths.
This is just amazing. When is somebody going to confront this guy on his BS in public without a script? Is he aware of the fact that the reason NHS is so heavy-loaded is because he still allows immigrants to cross the border on boats? Now he's trying to turn this country into a nanny state while ignoring the main problems causing all these minor issues he's focusing on. Here's a brave man giving a chilling discourse to the police in Northern Ireland that are trying to suppress the protests. The discourse was so hard-hitting that they even started chasing him down because of it.
Should be ashamed yourselves. Gas fucking park. Someone like me, I have a love and a loyalty to this country. I wanted to join the Guard. I had that motivation in me. I wanted to join the army. I had that motivation in me to protect and serve. No! The batterings will continue until the plantation is complete. We've already done it once before. The British Empire, 800 years we stood up against them in defiance. Forced plantation, genocided from our own villages, scattered to the four corners of the earth.
Just going at it. No punches held. I love the fact that this video can literally be spun with a clickbaity title like, Irish man gets chased by the police for telling the truth. And it would actually follow through. This video reminds of that woman in Ukraine that stood up to the Russian army when they entered civilian zones. But it seems like now the occupiers are controlling the police we were supposed to be protected by. It is getting so bad that in 2023, there were 7.5 million people on the NHS waiting list. Now, since Keir is in office, I don't even want to look at how much that number increased, but it seems like he'll just prefer to play around with the smoking fiddle instead of dealing with the 45,000 boats that arrive in this country every year. And while he's at it, he might also blind himself to the fact that in 2022, net migration hit an all-time high of 606,000 people. But I think this is actually a good thing in his books. Does he believe we can sustain this for an infinite amount of time? Well, we don't know. Because he's a lover of avoiding to directly talk about this issue in public, and he loves to call Protestants Islamophobic. But you know what? I feel like you are too Islamophilic, Starmer. You are the problem here. You love Islam to unhealthy levels, to the point where you are ready to prioritize illegals over the native citizens of this country. What a joke to the British public that voted for anti-immigration policies for over 20 years. They were promised they are going to get it, and look at what we've received in result. Violent Muslim encounter after violent Muslim encounter, while the government just ties the blindfold back on. Those are the types of things that forced people to get out into the streets to protest and to fight back against the waves of Muslim responses. And it seems like politicians love starting to play these centrist games where they try to appeal to everybody, to garner as much support as possible, which is why they concern themselves with the most irrelevant asinine of things like if women have penises or vaginas, and changing their opinions according to what they believe is going to improve their turnaround. This, while completely ignoring the most important issues of all, like the undercover invasion we are currently dealing with. Let's see for how much longer they are willing to keep ignoring our cries. Here's a clip of Nigel Farage blasting Keir Starmer for this type of behavior.
But I also think there's a danger here. And the danger is this. If you turn, through regulation and through tax on the price, a legal activity into effectively an illegal activity, you hand it straight to the criminal gangs. And this has happened in Australia. A packet of cigarettes in Australia is the equivalent of 35 quid.
Good Lord.
So what has happened? What has happened is the black market in tobacco is now huge. No self-respecting criminal dealer bothers with cocaine anymore. There's no money in cocaine. No, it's cigarettes, it's tobacco. And gang warfare in Melbourne has led to, wait for it, 97 fire bombings of shops and houses in the last 2 years. You overtax a product, you make it almost impossible to use legally, you drive it into the hands of the wrong guys.
Just the usual type of incidents that eludes politicians when they need to make crucial decisions.
We will not be smoke-free by 2030, Sir Keir. We will not be drug-free by 2030. We won't be alcoholism-free. We won't be obesity-free. No one's encouraging anyone to smoke, but please, please, government steps too far, it'll have the wrong effect.
Nigel, we always suspected that Keir Starmer would come in with a fairly authoritative view of how he was going to run the country, that he knows best, that the collective is always more important than the individual. But have you been surprised by how much he has accelerated all sorts of changes? I'm thinking particularly as well in terms of free speech in such a short period of time.
Yes and no. I mean, let's not forget, please, that Rishi Sunak was putting forward the most ludicrous law where in a decade's time, a 25-year-old could buy a packet of cigarettes and a 24-year-old couldn't. So both parties are on this direction.
These peeps have some serious explaining to do.
And by the way, it'll be alcohol next. The World Health Organization now saying there is no safe limit for alcohol. But I think the attack, and we heard it in Germany yesterday, worried about the snake oil of populism. But the only way to deal with it is delivery. Well, 1,100 people over the channel in the last 2 days is not delivery. I think Starmer is genuinely scared that the mass of the population are deeply unhappy with legal and illegal immigration at these levels. And so the attempt to smear everybody who feels that way as being far right to take some people out and put them in prison for saying unpleasant things on Facebook or elsewhere. These, to me, are symptoms of fear.
And this is just the type of stuff we've come to expect from people in our government. If they still refuse to take actions, even after all of this, then they'll just have to deal with the far-right thugs that want their country back. We'll just have to see for how much longer they can jail us for social media posts. Anyway, this is going to be it for now. That's all we had for today. If you want to see Douglas Murray brutally troll Muslims, then click on the video on screen. And we'll see you in the next one. Peace.